Nobody sits in seat 13C on my bus. I don't mean it's a rule. I mean the kids won't do it. When new students try, the others grab them and pull them away, shaking their heads, looking at me with these strange, knowing expressions. After my first week, I stopped asking why. You learn not to push things in a town where everyone's family goes back 6 generations and the nearest Walmart is 45 minutes away. My name's Tom Brenner. I've been driving Route 7 for Waverly Elementary since August, covering the farmland between County Road 187 and the old grain cooperative near Fletcher's Pond. It's honest work. 32 kids, mostly farmers' children who live in houses you can't see from the road. The kind of place where everybody knows your truck before they know your name. The previous driver, Betty Klein, retired suddenly last summer. 43 years on this route, and she quit with 2 weeks left in the school year. When I asked Principal Hoffman about it, he just said Betty needed rest. But I'd seen her at the Hy-Vee in town the week before, and she looked fine. Better than fine. She looked relieved, like someone who'd finally put down something heavy. I should have paid attention to that look. The first 3 months went smooth. Wake up at 5:30, drive the route twice daily, wave at the same parents standing in the same driveways. The kids were good, loud sometimes, but good. They'd pile on in their muddy boots and John Deere caps, arguing about who got to sit where. Every seat filled up eventually, except 13C. That one stayed empty, day after day, like an agreement nobody had to discuss. I asked Jake Kuster about it once, 4th grader with red hair and freckles who sat right in front of it. How come nobody uses that seat? He looked at me like I'd asked why water was wet. Just don't, Mr. Brenner. His sister Emma, 2 grades younger, whispered something to him. He shook his head at her, then turned back to me. My mom says it's better not to wonder about some things. That's Iowa for you. Folks around here have long memories and short explanations. Last Monday changed everything. Morning pickup went normal. Kids shuffling on with their backpacks, claiming their usual spots, the smell of diesel and November frost mixing through the open door. I did my mirror check before pulling away from the elementary school lot, same as always. That's when I saw him. A boy sat in 13C, maybe 8 years old, wearing clothes that looked handmade. Brown corduroy pants and a plaid shirt with a collar too wide for any decade I recognized. His skin was gray, not pale from cold, not sick. Gray like something that had been underwater too long. Waterlogged. He stared at me in the mirror, completely still, and his eyes didn't blink. And I could see the vinyl seat right through his chest. My foot slammed the brake. Hard. 3 kids in the front rows lurched forward, and Emma Coaster started crying. The bus shuddered to a stop right there in the parking lot, engine idling rough. Mr. Brenner? Jake's voice sounded far away. What's wrong? I couldn't answer, couldn't move. Because in the mirror, that gray boy was still sitting there, still staring at me with those flat, drowned eyes. His mouth opened slowly, like he was trying to remember how speaking worked. Then I blinked, and seat 13C was empty again. Just faded green vinyl and morning sunlight coming through the window, like nothing had ever been there at all. I sat there with my hands locked on the wheel, engine rumbling, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the early mornings were finally catching up with me. I'd only had 1 cup of coffee, and the sun coming through the windshield at that angle could play tricks. Mr. Brenner? Jake said again. We're gonna be late. I forced myself to nod, released the brake, and pulled out of the lot. My eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror. Seat 13C stayed empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from it. The rest of the route passed in a blur. I dropped the kids at school, went through my mid-morning routine at the bus garage, checked tire pressure and fluid levels, tried to focus on normal things. Phil Denton, the head mechanic, asked if I wanted to grab lunch at the diner. I told him maybe later. When I climbed back into the bus for the afternoon pickup, I made myself look at seat 13C properly. Really look at it. The vinyl was cracked in places, showing yellow foam underneath. Someone had carved their initials into the armrest years ago. TM plus LH. And the metal frame underneath had rust spots from Iowa winters. It was just a seat, old and worn, like everything else in this 40-year-old bus. But when I reached out to touch it, my hand stopped about 6 inches away. The air around the seat felt different, colder, like standing near an open freezer door. I pulled my hand back. That's when I noticed the corner of paper sticking out from under the driver's seat. I bent down, thinking maybe it was trash someone had dropped, and found a folded piece of notebook paper wedged between the seat base and the wall panel. The paper was yellow with age, and when I unfolded it, the creases were so deep they'd nearly torn through. Driver protocols. Route 7 was written across the top in handwriting that looked old-fashioned, like the kind of cursive they don't teach anymore. Below it, 6 numbered items. 1. Never let anyone sit in seat 13C. If a student attempts to sit there, redirect them immediately. Do not explain why. 2. If you see a gray-skinned boy in seat 13C through your mirror, do not turn around. Do not acknowledge him. Keep driving. 3. The boy will try to speak to you. His voice sounds like wet gravel. Do not respond. Do not make eye contact, even in the mirror. 4. Fletcher's Pond will appear closer than it is on maps. Drive past it without slowing down. Do not stop if you hear splashing. 5. If you smell pond water inside the bus, crack the front windows and maintain speed. The smell means he's trying to follow someone home. 6. At 3:47 p.m. every day, count the students on your bus. If you have one extra, pull over immediately and wait until the number is correct again. Do not look to see who the extra is. My hands started shaking, not from fear, from anger. This had to be some kind of joke. Maybe the other drivers were hazing me, seeing if I'd fall for it. Betty Klein probably left this here as a prank on whoever replaced her. But then I remembered the way she'd looked at the high V. That relief. I flipped the paper over. On the back, in different handwriting, shakier, more recent, someone had written, "Followed these for 43 years, never missed one. Daniel stays in his seat as long as you follow them. Previous drivers who didn't are all dead. You're number 7, BK. Betty's initials." I read it 3 more times, looking for the punchline, waiting for Phil Denton to pop out laughing. But the bus garage was empty, except for me and the smell of old diesel. My phone buzzed. Text from the school secretary. Running 10 minutes late for pickup. Teachers' meeting. I looked at the paper again, then at seat 13C. The November sun was coming through the window now, landing right on that empty spot. Dust particles floated in the light, and for just a second, maybe less, I saw the outline of a small shoulder. A child-sized shape sitting there, catching the dust in a pattern that didn't match the random swirl around it. Then it was gone. I folded the paper and shoved it in my jacket pocket. When I started the engine, I made sure to flip down the sun visor, checking if there was anything else hidden up there. Nothing. Just Betty's old fuel log from 1987, still clipped in place like she'd left it on purpose. Like proof she'd actually been here. I pulled out of the garage and headed toward the school. The whole drive, I kept thinking about that number. 7. Betty said I was number 7. That meant 6 drivers before her. 6 people who'd had this route, had this bus, had seen what I had seen. 6 people who hadn't followed the protocols. 6 people who were dead. I reached the elementary school 15 minutes early and sat in the parking lot, watching kids play on the frost-dead grass. Normal kids doing normal things. Jake Coaster was chasing his sister around the swings, both of them laughing, red-cheeked, alive. When the bell rang and they started filing toward my bus, I pulled the paper out of my pocket and read protocol number 1 again. Never let anyone sit in seat 13C. That one, at least, I wouldn't have to worry about. The kids already knew better than I did. The afternoon pickup went smooth at first. Kids loaded on, chattering about their day, dumping their backpacks in the aisle before I could yell at them to watch where they were walking. Emma Coaster had a gold star sticker on her forehead. Jake was arguing with another boy about whose dad's tractor could plow faster. Normal. Everything was normal. I counted heads as they filed past. Habit from training, even before I'd read Protocol 6. 28 kids. 4 were staying after for basketball practice. That left me with my usual afternoon load, everyone accounted for. I checked seat 13C in the mirror. Empty. Good. But as I pulled out of the school lot, something felt off. The bus seemed heavier on the right side, like the suspension was sagging. I made a mental note to have Phil check it tomorrow. We were 5 minutes into the route when I caught the smell. Pond water, stagnant and thick, like algae rotting in summer heat. It filled the bus so fast I thought someone had tracked it in on their boots, but November had frozen every puddle solid for weeks. There shouldn't be that smell anywhere. Protocol 5. If you smell pond water inside the bus, crack the front windows and maintain speed. My hand went to the window crank before I could think twice. Cold air rushed in, sharp enough to make the kids in the front rows complain. I ignored them and pressed harder on the gas pedal. The speedometer crept from 35 to 45 on County Road 187, faster than I usually drove on these gravel stretches. The smell started to fade, slowly, like something reluctant to leave. In the mirror, I saw Emma Coaster sniffing the air, her nose wrinkled. She looked at her brother. "Do you smell that?" "Smell what?" Jake was staring at his phone, some game with bright colors. Like the lake. Like that time we went fishing and Dad's bait bucket tipped over in the truck. Jake finally looked up. "I don't smell anything." But I did. Even with the windows open, even with the wind cutting through the bus, I could still catch traces of it. Underneath the diesel and the kids' various smells, their fruity shampoos and the peanut butter sandwiches they'd had for lunch, that pond water smell lingered. The snow means he's trying to follow someone home. The protocol didn't say who's home. It didn't say how to stop him either. Just crack the windows and keep moving. I kept moving. We hit the first cluster of stops along Timber Road. 5 kids got off, waving goodbye as they trudged up their long driveways. The Voss twins, the Patterson girl, 2 boys whose last name I could never remember. But they lived in the white farmhouse with the red barn that was leaning about 10 degrees to the left. After each stop, I counted heads in the mirror. 23, then 18, then 15. The numbers matched what they should be. No extras. Fletcher's Pond was coming up. I knew it even though I couldn't see it yet. You could feel when you were getting close to that pond. Something about the way the air changed. The road dipped down through a stretch of woods, bare trees lining both sides, and beyond them, the land opened up where the pond sat like a dark eye in the landscape. I'd driven past it every day for 3 months. Never thought twice about it. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. Protocol 4. Fletcher's Pond will appear closer than it is on maps. Drive past it without slowing down. Do not stop if you hear splashing. I checked the speedometer. 40 miles per hour, right at the speed limit for this stretch. My foot wanted to ease off the gas as we approached the curve. Instinct, because you never knew when a deer might jump out, but I forced myself to maintain speed. The pond came into view through the trees. Gray water reflecting gray sky, surrounded by dead cattails and mud. I'd seen it 100 times, but today it looked different. Closer. Like it had moved toward the road, or the road had moved toward it. Maybe 30 feet from the shoulder instead of the 100 yards I remembered. I kept my eyes forward. Didn't slow down. The bus's tires crunched over gravel, and I heard the sound of water lapping against a shore, which made no sense because there was no wind today. The air had been still all afternoon. Then I heard the splash. Not a small splash. Something big entering the water, like someone had jumped in from the muddy bank. The sound was so clear and close that 3 kids turned to look out the right side windows. "Whoa, did you see that?" one of them said. "See what?" another asked. Something went in the pond. Something big. I didn't slow down. Didn't look. My hands were sweating on the wheel, but I kept the bus moving at 40 miles per hour until the pond was behind us and the road curved away into farmland again. In the mirror, I saw Emma Coosters staring out the back window, her face pressed to the glass. She was watching the pond disappear behind us, and her expression. She wasn't curious or scared. She looked sad. When she turned back around, she was looking directly at seat 13C. Just staring at it, like she could see something I couldn't. Her lips moved, forming words too quiet for me to hear over the engine noise. "Emma," I called back. "Everything okay?" She jumped, startled, then nodded quickly. But she kept glancing at that empty seat. We made 3 more stops. I counted after each one. 12 kids. 9 kids. 6 kids. All the numbers matched. By the time we reached the coaster driveway, the last stop on my route, the sun was starting to drop behind the grain elevator in the distance. Emma and Jake gathered their backpacks. Emma moved slow, like she didn't want to leave. "Have a good night, you two," I said, forcing my voice to sound normal. Jake bounded down the steps. Emma followed, but stopped halfway down and turned to look at me. Her eyes were too old for a second grader. The kind of eyes you get when you know things you shouldn't know. "Mr. Brenner," she said quietly. My grandma was friends with Daniel's mom. Before it happened. "Daniel?" I asked, though something in my chest already knew. "The boy in the seat," she whispered. "Grandma said he drowned on the way home from school. Long time ago. They never found him." Then she was gone, running after her brother toward the house. I sat there in the empty bus, engine idling, staring at seat 13C in the mirror. The afternoon light was hitting it at an angle, and I could see where the vinyl had faded from decades of sun exposure. Could see the rust on the metal frame, could see the carved initials, but I couldn't see the gray boy. Not yet. I checked my watch. 3:46 p.m., 1 minute before Protocol 6 kicked in. I started counting anyway, just to be sure. Counted every seat, front to back, all empty, all normal. When my watch clicked over to 3:47, I counted again. Still empty. Still normal. But seat 13C felt colder than the others when I walked past it to close the rear emergency door. And when I locked the bus up for the night at the garage, I could still smell pond water on my hands, even though I hadn't touched anything wet. If you like the stories, please hype the videos from a button like this just above the comment section. It helps the videos to get more reach and perform well. It would take just a few seconds and cost nothing, but would help the channel grow even faster. Thank you. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that gray face staring back at me from the mirror. Heard Emma's voice saying Daniel like it was a name everyone should know. Around 2 a.m, I gave up and went to my laptop. Searched Daniel drowning Fletcher's Pond, Iowa first. Nothing useful came up, just fishing reports and a blog about local swimming holes. Then I tried Daniel Carlisle, Waverly, Iowa drowning. The first result was a scanned newspaper article from the Waverly Democrat, dated October 17, 1984. Local boy drowns in bus accident. Daniel Joseph Carlisle, age 8, died Monday afternoon when Bus 7 from Waverly Elementary skidded on wet leaves and crashed through the guardrail near Fletcher's Pond. The bus came to rest partially submerged in the pond. 17 students were evacuated safely, but Carlisle, who was trapped in his seat by a jammed seatbelt, drowned before rescue crews could reach him. Driver Margaret Hollis, 34, was treated for minor injuries and released. It happened so fast, Hollis told reporters. I couldn't get to him. The water was so cold, and the seatbelt wouldn't release. I tried. God knows I tried. Recovery efforts for Carlisle's body have been ongoing for 3 days. As of press time, the child has not been found. Sheriff's Department spokesman Walter Green said the pond's depth and murky conditions have complicated the search. Services pending recovery of remains. I read it 3 more times. The seatbelt wouldn't release. They never found his body. And the bus number. Bus 7. The same bus I was driving now. The same route. I clicked through to the next article, dated November 3rd, 1984. Search for drowned boy called off. After 2 weeks of searching, authorities have suspended efforts to recover the body of Daniel Carlisle from Fletcher's Pond. Sheriff Green stated that the pond's unstable sediment and underwater vegetation made further searches too dangerous. We've done everything we can, Green said. Sometimes you just have to accept that nature won't give up what it's taken. Driver Margaret Hollis resigned from her position with the district last week. School officials declined to comment on her resignation. Margaret Hollis, the first driver. Betty said I was number 7, which meant 5 more drivers after Hollis, all before Betty took over. I searched for Margaret Hollis's obituary, found it dated 1987, 3 years after the accident. Cause of death, drowning. She'd been found in her bathtub with 2 inches of water in it. The medical examiner ruled it an accident, saying she must have slipped and hit her head. But 2 inches of water. I kept digging. Found the second driver's name in an old school board meeting transcript from 1988. Lawrence Peterson. Took over the route in 1985, drove it for 3 years. His obituary was from 1989, drowned in a fishing accident on Clear Lake. Body recovered after 2 days. The third driver was harder to track. Sharon Vogel. Started in 1989, quit in 1990. Died that same year. Her death certificate listed the cause as accidental drowning in her own swimming pool in December in Iowa. I stopped reading after the 4th driver. My hands were shaking too much to type. 4 drivers. 4 drownings. All of them within a year or 2 of leaving the route. Betty Klein had driven this bus for 43 years and walked away alive because she'd followed the protocols. Outside my apartment window, the sky was starting to lighten. I had to be at the garage in 2 hours. The morning route felt different. I checked seat 13C before every stop, counting kids after each pickup. 28 students total by the time we reached the school. All normal, all alive. But I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. At lunch, I drove to the Waverly Public Library. It was Tuesday, so Mrs. Gunderson was working the front desk. She'd helped me find tax forms back in September when I first moved here. Sweet woman in her 70s with glasses that made her eyes look twice their size. "Well, Tom Brenner," she said when I walked in. "What brings you by?" "Research project," I lied. "Local history. Curious about the 1984 bus accident at Fletcher's Pond." Her smile faded. "That was a terrible thing. Why would you want to dredge that up?" "Just trying to understand the area better. I'm driving that same route now." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Microfiche is in the back room. October through November 1984. You'll find what you need there." I spent an hour going through old newspapers, found more articles about Daniel, about the accident, about the failed search. But I also found something else. A small piece from December 1984, buried on page 7. Former bus driver reports strange occurrences. Margaret Hollis, who resigned following the October drowning of student Daniel Carlisle, has reported several incidents of paranormal activity in her home. Hollis claims to see the deceased child in mirrors and hear him calling for help. Family members say Hollis has been under tremendous stress since the accident and is seeking professional help. The article ended there. No follow-up, no resolution. Just Margaret Hollis seeing a dead boy in mirrors 3 months before she drowned in 2 inches of bath water. I printed the article and drove back to the garage. Phil Denton was under bus 4, changing the oil. "Phil," I called out, "you know anything about the drivers before Betty Klein?" He wheeled out from under the bus, wiping his hands on a rag. "Some." "Why?" "Just curious. Betty drove for a long time, right?" 43 years. Started in 82, I think. Before that?" He frowned, thinking. "There were a few others. Never lasted long. Route 7 seemed to have bad luck with drivers." "Bad luck how?" Phil shrugged. "Turnover. People would drive it for a year or 2, then quit, or transfer to different routes. Betty was the only one who stuck with it." "You remember any names?" "Not really. I didn't start here until 95, and Betty was already the only driver I knew for that route." He gave me a strange look. "Why all the questions?" "No reason. Just making conversation." But Phil knew I was lying. I could see it in his face. He'd worked at this garage for 30 years. He probably knew exactly what was happening, even if he wouldn't say it out loud. The afternoon pickup started normal. Kids loaded on, same as always. Emma Kuster got on last, walking slower than usual, and when she passed seat 13C, she stopped. Just stopped right there in the aisle, staring at it. "Emma, keep moving," I said. She didn't respond. Her backpack slipped off her shoulder and hit the floor. "Emma?" Jake turned around from his seat. "What's wrong?" "He's cold," she whispered. "He's so cold, and he can't get out." The temperature in the bus dropped. I watched my breath form clouds in the air, watched frost creep across the inside of the windshield even though the heater was running full blast. And in the mirror, I saw him. The gray boy sat in seat 13C, water dripping from his hair, his clothes soaked through. His lips were blue. His eyes were open but wrong, cloudy, like something that had been underwater too long. He was staring at Emma, and his mouth was moving, forming words I couldn't hear. Protocol 2. If you see a gray-skinned boy in seat 13C through your mirror, do not turn around. Do not acknowledge him. Keep driving. I gripped the wheel and pulled out of the school parking lot. "Emma, sit down," I said, keeping my voice steady. She wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at that seat, and now I could see she was crying, tears running down her face, her breath coming in short gasps. "Please," she said. "He needs help. He's been down there so long, and nobody came for him, and he's scared." "Emma, sit down, right now." I made my voice hard, harsh, the way my old drill sergeant used to sound when things got serious. It worked. She blinked, looked at me, then stumbled to her seat beside Jake. He wrapped his arms around her, and she buried her face in his shoulder. In the mirror, the gray boy was still there, still staring, and his mouth kept moving, kept forming those silent words. Then I heard it, not through my ears, inside my head, like someone pressing their mouth directly against my skull and whispering, "Cold, so cold, can't breathe, can't get out. Help me. Please help me. It's so dark down here." Protocol 3. The boy will try to speak to you. His voice sounds like wet gravel. Do not respond. Do not make eye contact, even in the mirror. I looked away, focused on the road ahead, on the yellow line down the center, on anything except that mirror. My hands were shaking. The voice kept going, kept whispering, and it did sound like wet gravel, like words filtered through mud and water and decay. "The buckle won't open. I've been trying for so long. Why won't anyone help me? Why did you leave me down there?" We passed Fletcher's Pond. I didn't slow down, didn't look, but I heard the splashing again, louder this time, and the voice in my head got stronger. "I just want to go home. Please, I'm so tired of being cold." I made all 7 stops without looking in the mirror once, counted kids by their voices as they said goodbye, counted by the sound of their footsteps on the stairs. When the Coosters got off, Emma looked back at me. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. "Don't look at him," she said quietly. "Grandma said looking at him makes it worse." Then she was gone. I drove the empty bus back to the garage, parked it, turned off the engine, and finally, I looked in the mirror. Seat 13C was empty, but the vinyl was soaking wet. I didn't report the wet seat. What would I even say? Instead, I grabbed paper towels from the garage bathroom and dried it myself, working fast before Phil came back from his break. The vinyl was ice cold under my hands, and the water, if it was water, had a smell to it, like algae and rot and something older than both. That night I called Betty Klein. Her number was still in the district's emergency contact list, and she picked up on the 3rd ring. "Betty, it's Tom Brenner. I drive Route 7 now." Silence on the other end, long enough that I thought she'd hung up. "You found the protocols," she finally said. Not a question. "Yeah, under the driver's seat." "You following them?" "Trying to. But I need to understand." "No, you don't." Her voice was sharp. "Understanding won't help you. Following the protocols will. That's all that matters. Betty, please. There's a little girl on my route, Emma Cooster. She can see him. She knows things." "The Cooster girl?" Betty's voice went quiet. Her grandmother was friends with Helen Carlisle, Daniel's mother. That family's been tied up in this since the beginning. "What does that mean?" "It means some people are more sensitive to him than others. The Cooster girl, She's probably been seeing Daniel since she started riding that bus. Kids like that, they're drawn to him. Or he's drawn to them. She paused. You need to keep her away from seat 13C. I am. She won't go near it. Good. Because if she sits there, if anyone sits there, what happens? Betty didn't answer right away. I heard her breathing, heard the sound of ice clinking in a glass. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Older. Tired. I saw it once. October of '97. New kid transferred in from Cedar Falls. Didn't know the rules. Sweet boy, autistic. Had trouble reading social cues. Other kids tried to warn him, but he didn't understand. Sat down in 13C before I could stop him. What happened? Daniel appeared beside him. Not in the mirror. Right there in the seat. Solid as anything. Put his hand on the boy's shoulder. She stopped. I waited. Boy started screaming. Said the water was in his lungs. Said he couldn't breathe. Started thrashing around like he was drowning right there in the seat. I pulled over, yanked him out, called 911. Paramedics said his lungs were full of pond water. Impossible, they said, but there it was. Kid spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Did he recover? Physically, yeah, but he never spoke again. Not one word. Family moved away that Christmas. Betty took a drink of whatever was in her glass. That's when I understood. Daniel doesn't want to hurt anyone. He's just lonely. Been down there at the bottom of Fletcher's Pond for 40 years, and he wants company. Jesus Christ. Protocol 1 exists for a reason, Tom. Nobody sits in that seat, ever. What about the other protocols? The counting at 347? Check for extras. Sometimes Daniel tries to follow kids home. If you count wrong, if you have one more than you should, that means he's attached himself to someone. You pull over and wait. Wait until he gives up and goes back to his seat. Usually takes about 10 minutes. Has that happened to you? Twice. Both times I waited it out. Both times the extra count disappeared. Her voice dropped. But I know 2 drivers who didn't follow that protocol. They just kept driving. Dropped the kids off like normal. And those kids had accidents. Drowning accidents. One in a pool, one in a bathtub, both within 3 days. I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to process this. Why doesn't anyone just stop driving this route? Why doesn't the district shut it down? You think they haven't tried? Back in '88, they attempted to change the route, send Bus 7 somewhere else, put a different bus on this stretch. Know what happened? What? New bus crashed into Fletcher's Pond on the second day, same spot Daniel's bus went off the road. Nobody died, but the message was clear. This is his route, his bus, always will be. I heard her take another drink. The district knows. They've known since 1984. But what can they do? Abandon 30 families who need transportation. Drain the pond. They tried that in '89. Brought in equipment, started pumping. Found old farm machinery, trash, 3-car tires. But no Daniel. Pond filled right back up from the groundwater. So they just let it keep happening? They let drivers who follow the protocols keep their jobs and their lives, everyone else. She trailed off. There's a reason this route pays $3 more per hour than the others, Tom. District doesn't advertise it. But they know. A thought hit me. How many drivers quit before figuring it out? Most of them. They'd last a few weeks, maybe a month. See something strange, get spooked, put in their notice. Smart ones left town entirely. Betty laughed, but there was no humor in it. I was too stubborn. Needed the job, needed the insurance. So I learned the protocols, I followed them, and I made it 43 years. Why did you finally quit? Long pause. Because Daniel's getting stronger. You've seen it, haven't you? How clear he is in the mirror now. How you can hear his voice. Yeah. It wasn't always like that. When I started, he was just a shadow. Barely there. But every year he gets a little more solid. A little more real. And I got to thinking, what happens when he gets strong enough that the protocols don't work anymore? What happens when he can step off that bus and follow someone home without needing to attach to them? I didn't have an answer. That's why I quit, Betty said. 43 years. And I started to feel like maybe I was making it worse. Like every day I drove that bus. Every day I acknowledged what was happening. I was feeding him somehow, giving him strength. If that's true, then me driving the route doesn't matter now. He's there. He's always going to be there. Someone has to drive those kids, and someone has to follow the protocols. That's the deal. She sighed. Just keep doing what you're doing, Tom. Follow every protocol exactly. Don't try to help him. Don't try to end it. Just maintain the balance. And if I can't, then you'll drown. Maybe not in water. Maybe in your shower, or your kitchen sink, or you'll choke on your morning coffee. But you'll drown. That's how Daniel takes people. That's the only way he knows. She hung up before I could respond. Wednesday morning came too fast. I'd managed maybe 3 hours of sleep, and I kept seeing that grave face in every dark corner of my bedroom. The morning route was quiet. Kids loaded on, talking about some video game I'd never heard of. Emma Kuster got on at her usual stop, and when she walked past seat 13C, she didn't look at it. Just stared straight ahead like it didn't exist. Smart girl. We were halfway to school when I smelled the pond water again, thick and heavy, filling my lungs with every breath. I cranked the front windows down, maintaining speed like Protocol 5 said. The smell faded slowly, but in the mirror I saw something new. Daniel was sitting in 13C, same as yesterday. Gray skin, soaked clothes, dead eyes. But today his seatbelt was fastened across his lap. He was pulling at it with both hands, yanking the metal tongue, trying to release the buckle. His mouth moved. Won't open. Won't open. Help me, please. I looked away. Focused on the road. Counted the white posts on the side marking the ditches. Anything to avoid that mirror. But I could still hear him. Feel him. Like a weight pressing against the back of my skull. I've been trying for so long. Can't breathe. Water's so cold. Why won't it open? We reached the school. Kids filed off. I counted each one. 28 total. All accounted for. The bus emptied except for Daniel's voice, still whispering in my head, still begging me to help him with the seatbelt that had trapped him underwater for 40 years. I looked in the mirror one last time. His hands were raw from pulling at the buckle, and I realized with horror that every time I saw him, every time he appeared, he was reliving that moment, over and over, trapped in his seat, drowning, alone. The seat was dry when I checked it later, but I knew that wouldn't last. Thursday afternoon, everything fell apart. It started with Samantha Weatherly. Quiet girl, 5th grade, thick glasses and tangled brown hair that looked like nobody brushed it anymore. She sat in the middle of the bus, always alone, reading library books with torn covers. Other kids didn't talk to her much. I'd noticed bruises on her arms a few times, dark purple marks shaped like fingers. But when I asked if everything was okay at home, she just nodded and looked away. That afternoon, she got on the bus, crying. Not the normal kid crying, the kind where they scraped their knee or someone called them a name. This was different. Her whole body was shaking, mascara or maybe just dirt smeared down her cheeks, and she had a red mark across her face like someone had slapped her. "Samantha, what happened?" I stood up from the driver's seat. She didn't answer, just stumbled down the aisle while the other kids stared. Behind her, 3 eighth-grade boys climbed on. Tyler Abbott and his friends, the kind of kids who thought they were tough because their dads let them drive tractors. "Freak," Tyler muttered as he passed her, not even quiet about it. Samantha kept walking toward the back, head down, and I was about to say something to Tyler when I realized where she was heading, directly toward seat 13C. "Samantha, hold on," I started, but she'd already reached it, already dropped into the seat like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. She pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapped her arms around them, and buried her face. The temperature dropped. Fast. My breath came out in clouds. Every kid on the bus went silent. Even Tyler Abbott shut his mouth, and I saw Emma Coaster grab her brother's arm, her face going white. In the mirror, Daniel appeared. He materialized right next to Samantha, his gray shoulder touching hers, water dripping from his hair onto the seat between them. His head turned slowly until he was looking directly at her, and his mouth opened. Protocol 2. Do not acknowledge him. Keep driving. But Samantha was sitting in his seat. Protocol 1 had already been broken, and I didn't know what that meant. Betty's story about the autistic boy flashed through my mind. Lungs full of pond water, 2 weeks in the hospital, never spoke again. I should have pulled over. Should have followed whatever protocol existed for this situation. Instead, I put the bus in gear and pulled out of the school lot. In the mirror, Daniel's hand moved toward Samantha's shoulder. She didn't react, couldn't see him. But when his fingers made contact, gray, waterlogged, dripping, she gasped. Her whole body went rigid. "It's cold," she whispered. "Why is it so cold?" The other kids were watching now, pressed back in their seats like they could sense something wrong, even if they couldn't see it. Emma Coaster was crying silently, tears running down her face. We hit the first stop. 3 kids got off, practically running down the steps. I counted heads in the mirror. 25 left. No, wait. 26. 1 extra. Protocol 6. If you have 1 extra, pull over immediately and wait until the number is correct again. But the extra wasn't hiding among the other kids. The extra was Daniel, sitting solid and real next to Samantha, his hand still on her shoulder. And she was starting to shiver, her lips turning blue. I kept driving, stupid, reckless, but I didn't know what else to do. "Mr. Brenner?" Jake Kuster's voice shook. "Something's wrong with Samantha." I looked in the mirror again. She was hunched over now, arms wrapped around her stomach, breathing in short gasps. Her skin was going pale, and when she exhaled, water vapor came out. Too much, like she'd been holding her breath underwater. Daniel leaned closer to her. His mouth moved near her ear, and I could hear his voice in my head, even though I was trying not to listen. "Finally. Someone who understands. Someone who knows what it's like to be alone." Samantha's head turned slightly, like she could hear him too. Her lips moved. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you're cold." No, she couldn't talk to him. That was Protocol 3, do not respond. And she didn't even know the rules. "Samantha, don't talk," I called back. "Just sit still. We're almost at your stop." She didn't hear me. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Her hand lifted, shaking, slow, and reached toward the empty space where Daniel sat. "Don't touch him," Emma screamed. "Samantha, don't!" Too late. Samantha's fingers connected with something I couldn't see, and the bus swerved as every window exploded into frost. Not cracked, just covered in thick ice patterns blocking out the sun. The inside of the bus went dark except for the gray light coming off Daniel's skin. I pulled over, slammed the brakes, threw the bus into park. Everyone off. Now. Kids scrambled for the doors, pushing and shoving. I helped them down the steps, counting as they went. Tyler Abbott, the Morrison twins, Jake Kuster pulling his sister along, 15 kids total at this stop. Way more than should be getting off here, but I didn't care. I just needed them away from the bus. When the last kid was off, I turned back to Samantha. She was still in 13C, still touching whatever she thought she'd found there. Her whole body was shaking now, and frost was forming in her hair, on her clothes, spreading across her skin like she was turning to ice from the inside out. Daniel sat beside her, more solid than I'd ever seen him. Almost real, almost alive. And he was smiling. This terrible, hopeful smile, like he'd finally found what he'd been looking for. "Come with me," his voice said. "Down where it's quiet. Down where nobody can hurt you anymore. We can be together." "Samantha, let go." I ran down the aisle. "Let go of him right now." Her eyes opened. They were cloudy, like looking through pond water, and she stared at me without recognition. "He needs help," she said. Her voice sounded wrong. Too wet. "The buckle won't open. He's been trying for so long and nobody came for him, and he's scared." I grabbed her arm and pulled. She came away from the seat easily like she weighed nothing, and I dragged her toward the front of the bus. As soon as she crossed into the aisle, Daniel vanished, but the cold didn't leave her. I carried Samantha off the bus and laid her on the grass beside the road. Her skin was ice under my hands. Her lips were blue. She wasn't shivering anymore, which I knew from basic first aid training was a bad sign. "Stay with me, Samantha. Just breathe." She did breathe. Once, twice. And water came up, not a little. Not like she'd swallowed some in a pool. Pond water, thick with algae and sediment, poured from her mouth like someone was draining it out of her lungs. I turned her on her side and she coughed up more. More than should have been physically possible. Her whole body convulsed with it, and I heard Jake Coaster crying somewhere behind me. Heard Emma saying, "I told you, I told you, I told you," over and over. When Samantha finally stopped coughing, she lay still. Her chest rose and fell, so she was breathing, but her eyes stayed closed. The water that had come out of her soaked into the dead grass, and I could smell it. That same pond smell from the bus, from Fletcher's pond, from 40 years of rotting vegetation and decay. I called 911, told them a student was in shock, possible hypothermia, gave them our location on Timber Road. While I waited for the ambulance, I checked on the other kids. They were huddled together about 20 yards away, all of them watching me with the same expression Emma had worn since Monday. They knew. Every single one of them knew what had happened, even if they couldn't explain it. The ambulance arrived 12 minutes later. Paramedics loaded Samantha onto a stretcher, wrapped her in thermal blankets, started an IV. One of them looked at me with confusion. Her core temperature is 87 degrees. How long was she outside? Not long. Maybe 5 minutes. That's not possible. This kind of hypothermia takes hours. He shook his head. And there's water in her lungs. Fresh water. You said she didn't fall in anything? No, she was just sitting on my bus. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his face. But he didn't press the issue. Just loaded Samantha into the ambulance and drove away, sirens fading into the distance. I called the school, explained there'd been an incident. Kids were safe, but scattered along Timber Road. I needed backup buses to complete the route. Principal Hoffman didn't ask questions, just said he'd handle it and hung up. Then I walked back to my bus. Seat 13C was soaked. Not damp, soaked like someone had dumped a bucket of pond water directly onto it. The vinyl was cold enough to hurt when I touched it, and the smell was so strong I gagged. But worse than that was what I found when I looked closer. In the frost that still covered the windows, someone had written a message. The letters were shaky, like a child's handwriting, traced with a fingertip. Thank you. I stared at it until the frost began to melt and the words started to blur. Stared until another bus arrived to pick up the stranded kids. Stared until Phil Denton showed up in his truck, took one look at my face and asked if I needed to go home. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I need to go home. But I knew home wouldn't help, because I'd broken Protocol 1. I'd let someone sit in seat 13C, and even though I'd pulled Samantha out before Daniel could take her completely, I'd made contact. I'd touched whatever existed in that space between life and death, between this world and the bottom of Fletcher's Pond. And Daniel had said thank you. That night, I tried calling Samantha's mother. No answer. Left 3 voicemails asking about Samantha's condition, asking if she was okay, if the hospital had said anything. No response. At midnight, I drove to St. Francis Hospital in Waterloo, the closest facility that could handle severe hypothermia. Asked the night nurse about Samantha Weatherly. She's stable, the nurse said, but she won't talk. Won't respond to questions. Just stares at the ceiling. Doctors are running tests, but physically, aside from the temperature issue, she's fine. Can I see her? Family only. Are you family? I'm her bus driver. The nurse gave me a sympathetic look. Then I'm sorry. You'll have to wait until her mother gives permission. I drove home and didn't sleep. Just sat at my kitchen table, staring at Betty Klein's protocols, reading them over and over until the words stopped making sense. Protocol 1 said never let anyone sit in 13C. I'd failed. And now a 12-year-old girl was in the hospital with pond water in her lungs and ice in her veins, staring at nothing, silent as the grave. Friday morning, I called in sick. Couldn't face that bus. Couldn't look at seat 13C knowing what I'd done. Phil covered the route without asking questions, which told me he probably knew more than he'd let on. I spent the morning at the library again. Mrs. Gunderson saw me coming and just pointed toward the back room without a word. I went through every newspaper from 1984 to present, searching for anything about Route 7, about drivers, about accidents. Found more than I wanted to. Margaret Hollis, the first driver, hadn't just drowned in her bathtub. According to the police report I found archived in a box of old documents, she'd been found underwater with her eyes open, still trying to unfasten an imaginary seatbelt. The medical examiner noted strange bruising on her shoulder, consistent with someone gripping her tightly. Lawrence Peterson, the second driver, drowned during a fishing trip. But witnesses said he'd stood up in his boat, started screaming about water in his lungs, and threw himself overboard. They pulled him out within minutes. He was already dead, lungs full of pond water that matched Fletcher's Pond's composition. Sharon Vogel, the third driver. December 1990. Found at the bottom of her swimming pool. Neighbors reported hearing her screaming about a child who needed help. But when they arrived, she was alone, The pool's chemical analysis showed contamination. Freshwater algae that shouldn't have been there. The pattern held for all 6 drivers. Each one died by drowning. Each one within 2 years of leaving the route. And buried in old incident reports, I found something else. Each driver had tried to help a child in seat 13C. Margaret Hollis pulled a girl named Jennifer out of the seat in November 1984, 1 month after Daniel's death. Jennifer Paulson. She survived but moved away immediately after. No follow-up records. I found Jennifer on Facebook. She lived in Oregon now, 52 years old with gray in her hair and a profile picture of her grandkids. I sent her a message. My name is Tom Brenner. I drive the route where Daniel Carlisle drowned. I need to know what happened when you sat in seat 13C. She responded 30 minutes later. I don't talk about that. Ever. Leave me alone. I wrote back. Please. A student is in the hospital. I need to understand. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. I was 7, new to the school. Nobody told me about the seat. I sat down and something touched my shoulder. Something cold. I started drowning. Not in water, just drowning, like my lungs forgot how to work. Mrs. Hollis pulled me out, saved my life, but it didn't end. For weeks after, I was cold. So cold. My skin started turning gray. I'd wake up coughing up pond water. My mom thought I was sick, took me to every doctor in Iowa. Nothing helped. Then one morning, I woke up and I was fine. Completely fine. Like nothing ever happened. When, 3 weeks later, the same day Mrs. Hollis drowned. My hands went numb reading that. It transferred, Jennifer wrote. Whatever Daniel did to me, it moved to her. Mom figured it out later, did research, talked to people who knew about these things. When someone sits in that seat, Daniel tries to take them. If someone pulls them out, saves them, the curse moves to the rescuer instead. Like a trade. How do you stop it? You don't. The person who saves someone from seat 13C drowns. That's the rule. That's always been the rule. I'm sorry. She went offline before I could respond. I sat in my apartment, staring at the screen, feeling my throat constrict like there was already water in it. 6 drivers. 6 people who'd tried to save children from seat 13C. 6 drownings. Betty said I was number 7. I'd pulled Samantha out of that seat, touched her, made contact. And now Jennifer's words echoed in my head. The curse moves to the rescuer instead. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Brenner? A woman's voice, hoarse like she'd been crying. This is Linda Weatherly, Samantha's mother. How is she? They sent her home this morning. Doctor said there's nothing physically wrong with her. But Mr. Brenner, her voice cracked. She won't leave her room. Won't talk. Just sits by the window staring out at nothing. And she's so cold. I've got 3 blankets on her. Heater turned up to 80. And she's still shivering. What about her skin? Silence. Then, how did you know? Know what? Her skin. It's changing color. Getting paler. Almost gray. Doctor said it might be shock, but I don't. She sobbed. What happened on that bus? What did you do to my daughter? Mrs. Weatherly, I need to see her. Please. I think I can help. You've done enough. Stay away from my family. She hung up. I drove to the Weatherly house anyway. Small ranch home on the east side of Waverly, chain-link fence around a yard full of dead grass and a rusted swing set. Linda Weatherly answered the door with her arms crossed, blocking the entrance. I told you to stay away. Please, just let me talk to her for 5 minutes." "Why?" "So you can make it worse." But I could see the desperation in her eyes, the fear. She didn't understand what was happening to her daughter, and part of her hoped I did. She stepped aside. Samantha's room was at the end of the hall. Door closed. When I knocked, nobody answered. I opened it anyway. The room was freezing. Colder than outside. Colder than it should have been possible with the heat running. Samantha sat on her bed, wrapped in blankets, staring out the window. Her skin had gone from pale to gray, the same shade I'd seen on Daniel. Her lips were blue. "Samantha?" I stepped inside. "It's Mr. Brenner." She didn't look at me, didn't move, just kept staring at whatever she saw outside. Probably nothing. Probably everything. "He's still there," she whispered. "At the bottom. Waiting." "I know." "The buckle won't open." I can feel it. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that seat underwater, and the buckle won't open. Her head turned slowly toward me. Her eyes were cloudy. "You shouldn't have pulled me out." "I had to. You were dying. I was supposed to die. That's how it works. He finds someone lonely enough, scared enough, and he takes them down with him. But you stopped it." She smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. "Now he's taking me anyway. Just slower. No. There has to be a way to fix this." "There isn't." I looked it up. My grandma has books about this stuff, old stories. When someone sits in the cursed seat, they either drown or the person who saves them drowns instead. Those are the only two options. She pulled the blankets tighter. I can feel the water in my lungs. It's always there now, getting deeper every day. I sat down on the edge of her bed. Her mother was in the doorway, listening, her face white. "What if we could find Daniel's body?" I said. "Give him a proper burial. Would that break the curse?" Samantha's eyes focused on me. "His body's still in the pond. They never found it. Grandma said the pond won't give him up." "What if we tried anyway?" "They drained it once, in '89. Didn't find anything. Maybe they weren't looking in the right place. Maybe we could." "Mr. Brenner." Her voice was flat. "I'm going to die. Either I drown like Daniel, or you drown trying to save me. That's how this ends. That's how it always ends." Behind me, Linda Weatherly made a choking sound. I stayed with them for another hour, but Samantha didn't say anything else. Just sat there, getting colder, getting grayer, staring at nothing. When I left, Linda followed me to my truck. Is she telling the truth? About the drowning? I wanted to lie, wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but I couldn't. "Yes." She grabbed my arm. "Then fix it. You're the adult. You're supposed to fix things. That's your job. I don't know how." "Figure it out." She was crying now, mascara running down her face. "That's my daughter. My baby. You don't get to just give up." I drove to Fletcher's Pond, parked on the shoulder where the old guardrail used to be, before they replaced it after the 1984 accident. The pond looked smaller than I remembered. Darker. The afternoon sun was starting to drop behind the trees, turning the water black. Somewhere under that surface, Daniel's body was still strapped in his seat. 40 years of decay and sediment and rot. 40 years of his spirit trying to pull someone else down with him. I took out my phone and called Betty Klein again. "I pulled a girl out of seat 13C," I said when she answered. Long silence. Jesus Christ, Tom. I know I shouldn't have, but she's dying now. Her skin's turning gray. She's coughing up pond water, and I can feel it too. Feel the water in my throat when I sleep. It's already starting then. The transfer. Jennifer Paulson told me about it. How the curse moves to whoever does the rescuing. Jennifer. Betty sighed. I wondered if she remembered. How long do I have? 3 weeks, maybe less. Every driver who tried to save someone, they all drowned within 3 weeks. She paused. Tom, I'm sorry. I should have warned you better. Should have made it clearer. But you seemed smart. Seemed like you'd follow the protocols. I thought I was helping. That's the trap. Daniel doesn't want to be alone anymore. So he finds the vulnerable ones, the ones who are already drowning in their own way, and he offers them company. And when someone tries to save them, he takes the rescuer instead. It's a trade. Always has been. I watch the pond ripple in the wind. What if I could find his body? Bring him up? Give him a proper burial? They tried that, multiple times. Not recently. Not in 30 years. Tom dash dash. I'm gonna try, Betty. I'm not going to just wait to drown. And maybe if I can put Daniel to rest, maybe Samantha will be okay. And if you can't? I didn't answer. Then you drown, Betty said quietly. And Daniel goes back to waiting for the next one. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. She hung up. I sat in my truck until the sun set and the pond disappeared into darkness. Then I drove home and started researching everything I could find about underwater body recovery, about pond drainage, about how to find something that had been missing for 40 years. Because Linda Weatherly was right. I had to fix this, even if it killed me. Saturday morning, I hired a local diving company. Cost me $800 to get 2 guys with equipment out to Fletcher's Pond on short notice. They thought I was crazy when I explained what I was looking for. Bus went off the road in 1984, I told them. Kid's body was never recovered. Family wants closure. The older diver, guy named Ray with a beard down to his chest, shook his head. That pond's been searched 6 times since then. If there was a body, somebody would have found it. Maybe they were looking in the wrong spot. Maybe there's nothing to find. But he took my money. And at 8 a.m., both divers went into the water. I stood on the bank, watching the surface ripple. The pond was maybe 40 feet across at its widest point, surrounded by dead cattails and mud that smelled like sulfur. Trees leaned over the edges, their bare branches reaching down like they were trying to touch the water. The temperature had dropped overnight. Ice was forming along the edges, thin sheets that cracked when you stepped near them. Ray surfaced first, pulled his regulator out. Bottom's about 20 feet down. Visibility's terrible. Lots of sediment, old machinery, trash. No sign of a vehicle. The bus wasn't in the pond. Just the kid. He was trapped in his seat. Couldn't get out. Then where's the seat? I didn't have an answer. The second diver, younger guy named Chris, came up a few minutes later. There's something down there. On the eastern side, near where the old road used to run. Looks like metal. Could be part of a frame. They went down again. I waited, counting seconds, watching my breath fog in the November air. My throat hurt. Had hurt since Thursday, since I'd pulled Samantha out of seat 13C. Felt like something was lodged in there, something wet and cold. When I swallowed, I tasted pond water. The divers were down for 12 minutes. When they surfaced, Ray was dragging something behind him. Black metal, bent and corroded. He hauled it onto the bank, and I recognized it immediately. A bus seat frame, single occupant. The vinyl was long gone, rotted away, but the metal structure was intact. And still buckled across the frame, covered in algae and rust, was a seatbelt. The buckle was jammed, corroded solid. "That's not from '84, Ray said, examining it. "This buckle design is from the '70s. And look." He pointed to scoring marks on the metal. "Someone tried to cut it. Multiple times. Tool marks are all over this thing." "Did you find anything else?" "Clothing? Bones?" Both divers shook their heads. "Just this," Chris said, "sitting on the bottom like someone placed it there. Not buried, not stuck in mud, just sitting." I knelt beside the seat frame, touched the buckle with one finger. It was ice cold, colder than the pond water, and when I made contact, I heard Daniel's voice in my head. "Not there. Never was." I jerked my hand back. "You all right?" Ray asked. "Yeah. Fine. Can you keep searching? Maybe there's more. We've been over every inch of this pond. That's all there is." He started packing up his gear. "Whatever you're looking for, it's not down there." They loaded their equipment and left. I stayed by the pond, staring at the seat frame, trying to understand. Daniel's body wasn't in the pond, had never been in the pond. So where was it? My phone buzzed. Text from Linda Weatherly. "Please come. Something's wrong." I drove to the Weatherly house. Linda met me at the door, her face streaked with tears. "She won't wake up. She's breathing, but I can't wake her up. And her skin. God, her skin." I pushed past her and ran to Samantha's room. She was lying in bed, eyes closed, completely gray now, not pale. Gray like a drowned thing, like something that had been underwater too long. Her lips were blue-black. Frost covered her blankets, and the room was so cold I could see my breath. "Samantha." I shook her shoulder. Nothing. Her skin felt like touching ice. Water was leaking from her mouth. Not dripping, leaking. A slow, steady trickle running down her chin, soaking into her pillow. Pond water. I could smell it. "When did this start?" I asked Linda. "This morning." She woke up, said she was tired, laid back down. That was 3 hours ago. I thought she was sleeping, but then I checked on her and she was like this. Linda grabbed my arm. "What's happening to her?" I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because I knew what was happening. Daniel had found what he was looking for. Someone lonely enough, scared enough, damaged enough to accept his offer. And even though I'd pulled Samantha out of his seat, even though I'd tried to save her, it was too late. She was drowning, had been drowning since Thursday, and now she was finishing what Daniel had started. "Call 911, I said. "I already did." "They're on their way." Linda's voice broke. "Tell me she's going to be okay. Please, just tell me that." I wanted to lie. Instead, I went back to my truck and drove to the library. Mrs. Gunderson wasn't at the desk. Saturday hours, different staff. I went straight to the local history section and pulled every book I could find about Fletcher's Pond, about the 1984 accident, about the Carlisle family. Found it in a self-published book about Iowa ghost stories, written by someone named Patricia Hoffman in 1992. Small paragraph, easy to miss. Following the October 1984 bus accident, Daniel Carlisle's mother, Helen, insisted on keeping her son's bedroom exactly as he'd left it. For years, neighbors reported seeing a small figure in the window. Helen died in 1996. The house was demolished in 2003. Local teenagers claim the land is still haunted. The house, not the pond. Daniel's body had never been in the water. The rescue crews had pulled him out, alive or dead the article didn't specify, but his spirit had never left that seat, never left the moment of drowning. And when his mother died, when his house was torn down, that's when he'd started appearing on the bus, started trying to bring people down with him. I found the property records. The Carlisle house had been at 4782 Timber Road, right along my bus route. The land was empty now, sold to a farmer who used it for equipment storage. I drove there as the sun started setting, found the old foundation, mostly hidden by weeds and snow. The cement was cracked, filled with dirt and dead leaves, and in the center, where the house had stood, someone had placed a small wooden cross, weathered and rotting, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. No name, no date, just a cross marking where a boy had lived before he drowned. My phone rang. Linda Weatherly. They took her to the hospital, she said. She's not breathing right. They're saying her lungs are full of fluid. But she wasn't near any water, she was just sleeping. How is that possible? I hung up, stood there in the dying light, looking at that cross, understanding finally what I'd done. Pulling Samantha out hadn't saved her. It had just delayed it, given Daniel time to sink his hooks deeper. And now she was drowning anyway, slowly, inevitably, while I stood here with my throat full of water that wasn't there. Betty's words came back. Every driver who tried to save someone, they all drowned within 3 weeks. I had maybe 2 weeks left. Samantha had less. Because I'd tried to help. Because I'd broken protocol 1 and thought I could fix it. Because I'd believed there was a way to save someone from a curse that had been killing people for 40 years. I drove back to Fletcher's Pond one more time. The seat frame was still on the bank where the divers had left it. I picked it up, lighter than it should have been, and threw it as far as I could into the water. It sank immediately, disappeared beneath the black surface without a sound. And I heard Daniel's voice one last time. Not in my head, but somewhere deeper. Somewhere I couldn't reach. Thank you for bringing her to me. Now we won't be alone anymore. I got in my truck and drove until I couldn't see the pond in my rearview mirror. But I could still feel it. Could feel the water rising in my lungs, one breath at a time, filling the spaces where air used to be. 2 weeks, maybe less, and a 12-year-old girl was already drowning ahead of me, pulled down by something I'd tried to save her from. The protocols existed for a reason. I understood that now. Too late, but I understood. Samantha Weatherly died on Tuesday. That's what the obituary said anyway. 12 years old. Services private. In lieu of flowers, donations to the American Lung Association. The cause of death wasn't listed, but I knew. Everyone in Waverly knew, even if they wouldn't say it out loud. The girl had drowned without ever touching water. I didn't go to the funeral, couldn't face Linda Weatherly, couldn't stand there and pretend I hadn't killed her daughter by trying to save her. By Wednesday, I was coughing up pond water every morning. Not much at first, just enough to taste the algae, feel the sediment between my teeth. But it was getting worse. My lungs felt heavy, like something was sitting on my chest while I slept. I called the district and resigned. Effective immediately. Phil Denton didn't ask why, just said he'd put my final check in the mail and wished me luck in a tone that said he knew I wouldn't need it for long. 6 drivers before Betty, all dead within 3 weeks of trying to save someone from seat 13C. I was on day 12. Thursday morning, I woke up choking. Water poured from my mouth, enough to soak my pillow, and I couldn't breathe. Couldn't get air past whatever was flooding my lungs. I grabbed my phone, started to dial 911. But then I remembered Margaret Hollis drowning in 2 inches of bathwater. Remembered Lawrence Peterson throwing himself off his boat while people watched. The hospital wouldn't help. Nothing would help. I was going to drown. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. But soon. The only question left was whether I'd take anyone with me when I went. I tried calling Linda Weatherly one last time, needed to apologize, needed to explain. The number went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. 3 more times, and finally I understood. She'd blocked me. Didn't want to hear from the man who'd killed her daughter. I drove past Waverly Elementary that afternoon. Couldn't help myself. Needed to see the buses one more time. Needed to see if they'd found someone new for Route 7. They had. Bus 7 sat in the parking lot, engine running. New driver behind the wheel. Older woman I didn't recognize. The kids were loading on for the afternoon route. Same pattern I'd watched 100 times. And in seat 13C, visible through the emergency exit window, sat a girl. Gray skin, thick glasses, brown hair that looked tangled and unwashed. Samantha. My hands went numb on the wheel. I pulled over, stared through my windshield at that window, at that impossible figure sitting exactly where Daniel had sat for 40 years. She turned her head, looked directly at me through 2 layers of glass and 50 yards of distance. Her mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear but understood anyway. "You did this." Then she turned away, facing forward, staring at the back of the new driver's head. Waiting. I tried calling Linda Weatherly again. Still no answer. Drove to her house. No cars in the driveway. Curtains drawn. Mail piling up in the box. Nobody home. Nobody had been home for days. The realization hit me like drowning. Samantha wasn't in the hospital anymore. Wasn't in the ground. She was on that bus, sitting in seat 13C, doing exactly what Daniel had done to her. Finding someone lonely enough, scared enough, damaged enough to accept company from a dead girl who understood what it meant to hurt. I tried to save her. Pulled her from Daniel's grip. And instead of breaking the curse, I'd given it a partner. 2 spirits now instead of 1. 2 drowned children waiting in that seat for the next vulnerable kid to sit down. Betty had said Daniel was getting stronger, more solid, more real. Because he'd never been alone. Every driver who'd tried to save someone, every child who'd sat in that seat and died, they were all there. All adding their strength to his. All waiting at the bottom of whatever dark place that seat connected to. And I'd just added one more. My throat closed. Water filled my mouth. I pulled over on County Road 187, opened the door, and vomited pond water onto the gravel shoulder. It kept coming, kept pouring out, and I couldn't breathe around it. When it finally stopped, I sat there gasping, tasting rot and algae, feeling my lungs fill up again. 2 weeks. Betty said 2 weeks. I was on day 12. But now I understood what had really killed the 6 drivers before Betty. Not Daniel. Not the curse. Guilt. Knowing they'd tried to help and only made it worse. Knowing they'd created something that would keep killing long after they were gone. I started my truck and drove toward Fletcher's Pond, where this had all begun. Where it would end.